I was suicidal, and the drugs had taken a terrible toll on me. I had serious mental health problems, and I knew that I was in trouble. Does success look everything going really well, or does success come from the ability to come through things well? I just believed in hard work. I think I found this principle: whatever's in front of you, do it really well, and watch what will happen from that. If you've got money, you'll get through some problems. If you've got physical health, you'll get through some problems. If you're spiritually well, you can walk through anything, any situation.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. I just have a favour to ask before we begin. If you've been enjoying these conversations and want more stories that redefine success, please do us a massive favour and hit the subscribe button over on our YouTube channel. It literally takes 2 seconds to do and is completely free. It's a small gesture, but it makes a massive difference for us as it really helps us to grow the show. And with that, let's get into the episode. All right, welcome back to the Quest for Success podcast, and thanks for tuning in once again. Today on the show, this is going to be a little bit of a different one, I think. I think it's going to be a little bit more deep and philosophical, and I'm really actually looking forward to that, because today on the show, we're joined by Allan Brown, who is a coach which spans, across many different fields, from executives to athletes and, high performers. So really looking forward to getting your perspective, and thanks for joining us, Allan.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm excited to be here. I'm worried about what I might say.
Yeah, one of my very good friends highly recommended Allan. We should have this discussion. So finally, we came over to Newcastle, Toronto, to Allan's place, and thank you for having us, Allan.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you. Thanks for being here. And yeah, I think almost the timing, in some ways, it wasn't maybe meant to happen the last time. It just seemed to be such a struggle.
Yeah.
And then this time it was just instant.
Yeah. And it's perfect timing as well. Allan's just about to launch his book, and so we can talk about it as we go. And
So Allan, this podcast is all about success.
Yeah.
And so I want to start with a very fundamental question. And that is, what does success actually mean to you?
I think when I think about success, I go back to, I guess, almost 30 years ago, 35, 36 years ago. And I was with a good friend, and he said this to me. He said, Allan, there's some things that are not good to go through, but are good to have gone through. Mm-hmm. And I thought, man, that's quite a deep thought.
Powerful.
And it made me stop and think. And we were in the rainforest in Nicaragua at the time, and we were in our hammocks, and we had plenty of time to think. So I was like, for the next week, I think I just meditated on that, thinking, okay, let's think about my life, because it was a perspective shift of like, okay, does success look everything going really well, or does success come from the ability to come through things well? Yeah. And I thought, for me, it's always been about coming through things well. And I remember asking myself one day, what's your gift? What do you do that nobody else can do? What makes you different from anybody else? And what would that look like?
Yeah.
And this is the answer that came to me. Allan, you can walk through deep mud slowly for a long time.
Yeah.
And I thought, gosh, is that any good to anybody? But it's what I do. I'm able to get into really difficult situations and not give up, and find a way through and find a way out of it. And not always enjoy it, but do find that way out of it. And I think that for me is what success looks like, is the ability to go through difficulties and come out stronger.
Love it. Really, really deep. And
yeah, that's a very different perspective to what we've heard, but I really love that. And I suppose for us to understand the man that we're talking to, I think it's really important to go back and understand your early life, because I think that sets a great context for the man that you've become. Could you kind of walk us through that early stage of your life and how you think it's shaped you?
I guess I had a pretty difficult childhood, and at a young age I decided I wasn't putting up with it anymore. At the age of 12, I ran away from home.
Wow.
And I was away for weeks and weeks at a time, and every time I would get caught by the police, they would take me back, and finally they didn't take me back. They put me into care. So I came up through a series of care homes with a mixture of experiences. Some were good in ways, some were dreadful. And I think that kind of shaped my experience. And I learned, I remember not eating for days. I remember walking for days and sleeping in barns and wherever I could find somewhere to rest. And this would be 12 or 13 years old. And I think I learned then that I could actually do more than I thought I could do, and actually had this ability to get through difficult situations. And yeah, I think that was kind of set the scene for this ability to move, this ability to flow and quickly change, if you like, as well, came from that. So I think that resilience was I didn't know that then. I couldn't have put that into words, and I wouldn't have said that then, I don't think. But looking back on it, I think, wow, I can think of so many times when could have gave up and I didn't.
Yeah.
There was such a pressure to just throw in the towel and give up, and I just wouldn't. I wouldn't give up. And I think that was what set it, if that helps.
Yeah, definitely. And do you think having that profound, I suppose, realization that doing hard things and getting through them, you can get through them at such a young age, do you think that, shaped the mindset that has become who you are?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think what happens then is it becomes normal. That this becomes your expectation of life, that you will step into hard things. I remember first time on mission trips in Honduras, getting off the plane and thinking, what have I done? It was like such a culture shock. There was no electricity. There was bullet holes in the side of the building. There was police and army shouting at you with guns, and you're like, what have I done?
Yeah.
Why am I here? And then time goes by. First time I was in the federal prison in Central America, the guards don't come in with you. You go in on your own, and you go, what have I done? What am I doing? First time I went caving, and we were in a long crawl, so the roof's touching your back, and you're thinking, what have I done? Why am I here? So many times, like, you just step in, you get to a place where you just go, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, let's do it, and you just step in. And I remember listening to Bear Grylls once on the telly, and he was one of my favourite TV shows years ago. And he said that something happens in his brain, and he just switches things off, and then he does what he's going to do. Jumps off the cliff, drinks some camel poo or whatever, And I thought, I'm not as good as that, but there's definitely part of that. Yeah. I'm not as quick as him. I'm not as risk taker as him. But there's a part of me that just knows I can just step in. And if you step in and you just keep going, like 25 years of my life was on business turnaround. So we went into businesses that were in a shocking state. They were either in receivership or about to go into receivership, and had usually been on a downward spiral for a number of years. It wasn't a sudden thing. It was like, whatever, had been going on for years. And so you step into that, and everybody's looking at you to say, can you do something here? And all you have to do is just keep going every day. Keep going every day. And sometimes it takes a year, 2 years, 3 years, but invariably you find a way forward.
What was the turning point, Allan? Like, as a young kid, you decided, well, I want to run away, like, if you don't mind asking.
Yeah, I think there was a mixture of violence and control. So there was a lot of violence in the house.
Uh-huh.
And then I would be locked in my room for days at a time. I wouldn't be allowed out. Mm-hmm. And then there'd be more violence, and then be locked in my room again. I got to the point where I thought, I can't do this. I actually can't live like this anymore. I mean, you're 12 years old, you can't express your emotions and things then. But I just knew that anything had to be better than this. And once I ran away the first time, and you can read about it in my book, I think I got this idea, this is actually better. Sleeping in a barn, having no food, but having none of this oppression and violence is actually better than being at home. So I think that was what was the motivating factor, yeah.
And I'm really curious about that transition from this 12-year-old boy who's run away and is basically fighting for his life to then, kind of finding your feet and really, growing that confidence in yourself.
Yeah. Gosh, that's a big chunk there. Yeah. Well, look, let me give you a bit of it and try and bring it into a shape. So, come out of care homes, you're 15, you're on your own in Scotland, there's no support for you. So you're out in the street, you have to find your own way. There's no housing, there's no structure, if you like, at that point to help you. And so I started to find my way, but then I found my way into a lot of the wrong stuff. So I got into alcohol early on. I got into heavy drugs early on. I was using cocaine. I was on amphetamines, everything you could think of. Yep. And I got into the wrong crowd, the wrong influences. And I think that then for a number of years was like a difficult journey. I think it really affected my mental health, was really affected by it. I found myself really struggling at times. Then I had a friend who talked about education. And of course, running away from home, I hadn't finished school. I'd left school at 13 and hadn't gone back. I had no real education. My writing, my reading was shocking. And there was a system in Scotland where adults could sit in schools. It was a very, I guess, a new thing they'd done. I don't think they do it anymore, but they did it this year. So I went and found out I could do this. So I went back to school, probably been about 24 years old. Wow. And sat in with, they would have been 16, 17, 18-year-olds, I think, and redid my hires. And I was given a challenge by the teaching staff that I had to do all in 1 year. So I had to do like 3 years' work really in 1 year. So I found myself getting lost in that a little bit. And I had a tiny little shared, in a shared house in Edinburgh, I had a tiny little room, but it was my room. So I'd be up at 3 a.m, books all over the floor, reading, studying. And I found that there was almost this separation happening. I was living two lives. I was still struggling with the drugs and the drinks, but I was finding education and started to read Shakespeare and really understand universal themes and poetry and start to kind of unpack stuff and go, wow, I've got this hunger for information that I can really, it's almost there's a way forward here. So I finished my hires. And I think that in some ways was a turning point. It gave me some hope that because I think I thought I was stupid. Yeah. I'd been told I was stupid all my life, and I think I just thought I was stupid. It was like, I guess, jumping forward again a little bit, but I thought I couldn't learn a language. I thought I was just stupid. I thought some people are gifted, they can learn languages. I'm not, I'll never learn a language. There's no point trying. When I went to Central America, I found an amazing thing. Actually, if you work hard, you can learn a language. So I learned Spanish. I put myself into a village for 3 months where I didn't speak any English and sat in a hammock with the kids every day, and they taught me Spanish. And then I was able to continue to do stuff there and actually communicate and not be relying on interpreters all the time. So, I think there's these moments, isn't there? Where you,
during that time, Allan, you had any hope, plan, this is what I want to be, or you just wanted to just go by the day?
I think for a long time it was by the day, and that's a great observation. I think that's when you're in that state, that's all you've got, one day at a time. Yeah. And you find yourself in jobs that don't really open up. There's not really opportunities. It's always long hours, minimum pay. And you're thinking, surely this can't be it, Yeah. So we were in one children's home. There was 12 of us in that home. And then they shut the home suddenly, and we were all moved and we were split up. And so we never saw each other again, a lot of us. But I can't remember how, but I stayed in touch with the man who ran the home. And he had actually seen something in me, and he'd invested in me. He sent me on a outward bound course at the age of 14. I went down to the Lake District in England and did all this camping and abseiling and rock climbing stuff. And it was kind of another moment where you thought, there's a whole different world here. So I stayed in touch with him. And then I got back in touch with him. And he lived up in the Highlands of Scotland. So I went up to visit him and I would have been 18, 19, 20 at this time. Became friends with him, again, connected. And I was having a terrible time in Edinburgh at the time. I was homeless for a long time. I broke into an abandoned house, and I stayed in this abandoned house. Some of the neighbours knew it was a top floor, and some of the neighbours knew I was there, and they stopped me in the stair and they said, look, if you cause any trouble, we'll tell the police. Yeah. But if you don't, we'll be okay. And then I went to London for a while just to try and escape from some stuff that was going on. When I came back, the house had been burnt down. So I was homeless again. And so this was, and then I ended up getting this horrible apartment. I think it was about 16 floors up on the outskirts of the city. The apartment next door was burnt out. The lifts were no, it was just you could see why nobody else was living there. And I was really, really unhappy. And then my friends up in the Highlands said, hey, why don't you come and live with us? That was a moment.
Yeah.
That was a moment that was a game changer.
Yeah.
And then this is the 1980s. And what happened was they were developing fish farming at this time up in the Highlands of Scotland. So I got a job on a fish farm. And nobody had done this before. I didn't even know what it was, when I went up there. And so they were growing salmon out at sea. So I had gone from these low-paid, long hours, working split shifts, whatever, week jobs, and suddenly I'm out in the open, working out on the sea, on boats and driving and all sorts of stuff, and just having this best life and being paid really well. And I think that was a massive turning point for me. I suddenly thought, and it was for a company called Unilever.
Oh, right.
And Unilever saw something in me, so they started to invest in me, and they put me through their management program. So I got sent all over the place to all different countries to do different sorts of training. And they were developing me as this leader, this young manager. So that was like, it just so happened, with the title of my booklet's coming out. There was a lot of moments where it just so happened. And you think, wow, without that phone call, without going up there, who knows what the other direction would have been.
Yeah. So during this difficult time, Allan, did you have anyone that you look up to or sort of support you to come out of this difficult time?
No, not really. I think that came after.
Okay.
I started, once I came out of it, and we can tell you that story if you want. Once I came out of it, then I found myself wanting to connect with good men.
Yeah.
And I think it was more instinctive rather than I thought this formed thought I need to be around good men. I had this I just knew that if I can be around good men, that's good for me and it's going to help me. So I positioned myself then to let's be around good men who raise their families well, who run their businesses well, who have got like a life outside their career, who've got balance, who I can go, I want to be more like that. I want to be more like that as a dad, as a husband, as a businessman, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Did you ever thought of giving up?
I guess it was a crisis. I don't know how much you want to go into this, but when I was 30, and you can edit this bit out if you want, but I was suicidal. And the drugs had taken a terrible toll on me. I had serious mental health problems, and I knew that I was in trouble. And I had such a pain. I think looking back, I think I was struggling with rejection. And I think it's goes right back to my parents, of this sense of not being valued, not being wanted. And at that time I couldn't have explained it, but there was just this pain inside me that I couldn't deal with. And the pain was just so great one day. I thought, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it through today. I can't carry this anymore. And I didn't know what to do. And I think, it doesn't make sense to end your life.
Yeah.
But the pain's so great that you don't know what else to do. And so in that place, I think I went running. I was a mad keen runner. And I thought, I'll go running. And if I can just get tired enough, I might sleep. And maybe tomorrow I'll still be able to. It was that whole kind of, can I get through this thing, So I did that. Wasn't any good. And I was stood outside my cottage. So I'm in this tiny little cottage on the west coast of Scotland, looking out over the Atlantic. The next place is America. There's 6 houses in the village. They're all spread out. This is where I was living at the time. And I just felt this deep sense of loss. And I cried out the name Jesus. I can't explain it, but this incredible warmth came over me. This peace came over me. And I just knew that something had happened. I knew that I didn't need drugs anymore. I knew that I didn't need drink anymore. I knew that something significant had happened to me at that moment. And I felt okay. The pain had gone. That thing that was unbearable had actually gone. And I think that for me was the start of a significant turning point where I went, wow, that wasn't me that got through that, but somehow I'm through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to go to the point of like, you know, your friends in the Highlands who invited you over, the people at Unilever putting you through the course. How important do you think it was, those people believing in you when you maybe necessarily didn't believe in yourself?
That's a great question. Yeah, no, there was such tension. I was living two lives. So at work, I'm this dynamic leader who is taking on the biggest challenges, who is up against impossible odds some days to get things done, you know, against breakdowns and problems and technical problems. And we're leading a team, and it was a growing business. So it was constantly these massive challenges, almost undoable physically some days. But then at other times, I'm this alcoholic drug addict who's got these tension of pulling his life apart. But without that hope during the day, without those people believing in me during the day, I think it would have been much worse.
Yeah. And I want to go to the portion of your life where you mentioned 25 years you were turning businesses around.
Yeah.
Do you think there was like part of your early life that influenced why you were so good at that role of like coming in to almost disaster and being able to see the light at the end of the tunnel and turn it around?
I think so. I think what I learned was you have to do the hard yards, and it doesn't matter who sees you or doesn't see you. It's not about being seen. Mm-hmm. It's really about, so when I would go into a business to turn it around, I would, to the best of my ability, take my time. Yeah. You're under huge pressure financially, banks, all sorts of things going on. So you don't always have a lot, but you do what you can. So I would do things like, I want to talk to all the staff that used to work here in the last year. I want to talk to all our customers. I want to talk to all the customers that we've lost in the last year. Yep. I want to talk to all our suppliers. I want to talk to all our suppliers that we've lost in the last year. So I want to do this massive bit of research on the people part of the business and build trust and relationship with all those people, whether they're going to be part of the future or not. Sometimes it's about repairing broken promises as well as finding a way forward. And then in that place at the same time, I'm going through the accounts, the plans, the sales pipeline, the strategy with a fine tooth comb, ripping it apart and restructuring it, rethinking it. I'm looking with other people at what else could we do? What else? And that often means taking something that you don't know anything about and landing it to, is it feasible? What are the barriers? Are they overcomable? So you've got 5 or 6 things going at the same time, and you need to have huge energy internally to keep that going at the pace it has to go at. Yeah. And then so I feel like decision making is this kind of, do we need to make a decision? Then do we have all the information? Then can we get the right outcome from that information? What bits are helpful? And then the last part is, can we make it stick? You can make a great decision, but if it doesn't stick, it's not a great decision. So for me, it was always 4 parts of like working with, so that's kind of 30,000 feet. That's what I'm thinking at 30,000 feet. But meanwhile, on the ground, we've got all this stuff going on to answer those questions. Yeah, that's that. Yeah.
I want to go back to your early career. Like, you had this opportunity to work in Unilever and they saw your potential and then develop you. What do you think, your perspective, what did they see?
I think what they saw initially was a hard worker. So I was brought up to believe in hard work, wherever I went. My parents were hard workers. There was a lot of things not so good, but they were both hard workers. So I was instilled at a young age to work hard. It was a principle. And I think I always prided myself on being a hard worker. So when we worked for Unilever in Scotland, I would be there on a Friday night out in the yard with the rain, horizontal rain and wind coming off the sea. I would be on the back of the lorries, loading boxes on by hand, sheeting the lorries down, roping them up at 10 o'clock on a Friday night. And at 6 o'clock, I'd see all the taillights of all the other staff going up the hill back to their homes and their dinners and whatever.
Out at the pub.
Yeah, in the pub. And I would be there on Saturday morning building cages and loading the lorries and emptying the ice plant. And I was just unstoppable force when it came to working. I couldn't eat enough. I was working so hard. I was eating all I could eat and I was still losing weight.
Yeah.
So I think the initial, and I go back to other jobs. I worked in a warehouse in Edinburgh and I just believed in hard work.
Yeah.
So a lot of the other guys were saying to me, slow down. You're making us look bad and there'll be nothing left to do. And then so a couple of times the boss came around the corner, the senior guy, and I would be doing something and he would look at me and go, And then, a month later, I got promoted. And so I think I found this principle: whatever's in front of you, do it really well, and watch what will happen from that.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think what I looked for was an entry point.
Yeah.
I believed in myself. I thought if I can find an entry point in this business, I know that I'll get somewhere.
Yeah.
Allan, it seems like you're very values driven, and clearly hard work is one of them. Yeah. I'd love to know, what are some of the other core values that you try to live by?
Yeah, I think for me, I would say spiritual wellness is really important to me. I think because that affects every part of my life. Yeah. If you've got money, you'll get through some problems. Mm-hmm. If you've got physical health, you'll get through some problems. If you're spiritually well, you can walk through anything, any situation. So I think for me, having complete peace on the inside, everything I do. So I'm doing it well. I'm doing it with the right principles for the right reason and staying in it. I guard that place. And I think that's what allows me to keep doing things well, is that becomes a core value. I think I value humility, that I don't want to do something to be seen. I'm quite happy to be number two or be in the background. I'm not looking to be, anything special. So I think these things are really important to me, to hold on to my own peace on the inside, to treat my wife well, to raise my kids well, to make sure that I'm not getting out of balance. These are all really important values, yeah.
So from a very humble beginning, I guess, working in a corporate world, and then you went to the top. Like, what was your final role and before you start your own thing?
Yeah, so with Unilever, I was the operations manager over 3 different companies, 3 different parts of a company with probably, I would have thought 400 staff in it. And so that I joined them as Unilever has a grading system. So you join as grade 4, which means you're an operator. Yeah. They called me a farm assistant. Uh-huh. I remember trying to get my first bank account when I moved up to Scotland and I was working for them. And I phoned the lady and said, I'm a farm assistant. She keeps saying, what chemist do you work in? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she was hearing pharmacist. No, I'm a farm assistant. So, and then they grade you up. So 5, 6, 7. And then, so that's like team leader. Yeah. Then up to supervisor, grade 12, 13, 14. And then into management, which is like almost going from an enlisted man to an officer.
Yeah.
And it's unheard of. Nobody had ever done it before.
Yeah.
So I was the first guy to go from grade 4 to grade 21, 22
Wow.
as a man, like a senior manager.
Yeah.
So in terms of going through that journey, what are the key leadership lessons that you learn?
Yeah. I think I learned a lot from mistakes, I think be good at what you do. Be good at what you do. I think for me, I think that's really important. Be good at what you do. Do your study, do your homework, be diligent, learn from other people, practice well, learn from your mistakes. I think for me, it's that the thing is that the stuff that's done in the background, the stuff that nobody sees you doing, I would be up at 4 a.m, doing some sort of study or something. I never stopped studying. I was studying marketing. I did a master's in operations. I then went on to do a diploma in health and safety, and kept studying.
Yeah.
And because I knew that if I had the knowledge and I could put it into practice, because it was always about application, not information. I want to put this into practice. I want to do something. I want to know it and then do it, not just know it, knowing it's no good.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that was part of the process, was this ability to get up early, stay up late, do long days, and prepare, always prepare. And somebody said to me, it's a really old saying now, and you'll have heard it a million times, but they said failure to plan is
Is a plan to fail.
Yeah, failure to plan or failure to prepare is preparing to fail. It was that kind of, I remember that hitting me and going, that's not going to be my story. So I decided then and there, I'm always going to be preparing, because if you're not prepared when the opportunity comes, you miss it.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Even now as a coach, I never stop growing and learning. Yeah. So I coached, I do Gallup strength coaching, Working Genius, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. I'm a Gottman level 3 marriage therapist, Prepare and Enrich marriage, professional supervisor. You know, the list goes on, plus my business background, plus my experience. So when I'm talking to people, I can flip between things really quickly. I could be talking to you about your natural talents, and I could spot something in your relationship that needs some help. So I can put my Gottman hat on and go, let's just talk about relationships for a minute.
Yeah.
You know? So I've got this, I've got an ease of like morphing things in my head and making things mixed up.
Yeah. Do you think this all, what you do now, based on going through some of the difficult challenges, like, you know, because looks like you kind of intentionally gone outside your comfort zone with the intention of continuous learning.
Yes.
Is that right way to say?
Yeah. I think I'm only comfortable when I'm uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So I have to be doing something that's a little bit beyond me. I don't like being contained and going, well, I'm just coasting now. I mean, I've left jobs because I was just coasting.
Yeah.
Like, this is no good for me. I'm not going to thrive here. I'm not going to, this is not me. You know, in fact, that's probably why I enjoy turnaround, because you know, once I've turned it around, here, it's yours, I'm off. Where's the next turnaround? I love that stuff, you know. And you take a deep breath, you maybe have a week or two to just compose, and then deep in you go again. Yeah.
And when did you realize that your personality fit being a coach, or you wanted to be a coach?
I think not long after I came to Australia, really, I think somebody talked to me about Gallup strengths, and I went off and did my Gallup strengths. So that'd be 15 years ago. And what I realised then was I've been coaching people all my life, but I didn't able to put words on it. Yeah. So when you go into a business and it's in receivership, everybody's worried they're going to lose their job. And you have to try and get that team reshaped and get them performing at their best when psychologically they don't feel safe. You know, if you think about psychological safety, then they're completely outside that at this point, when a lot of their friends have been laid off. They don't know what the future looks like. Week by week, day by day, are we going to be next? And you're going in to lead that. Then you have to have this way forward for them. You know, you have to be able to make them feel safe, bring them into a place of trust, have healthy conflict in that trust. So that takes a lot of work to do that. And it often takes a lot of story. So you have to be a little bit vulnerable. If they think you're Superman and you're never going to make a mistake and you're come near this guy, then they can know. I think you have to change that. You have to change the narrative and go, oh, let me tell you about some of the things that have gone badly wrong for me. And that builds a bit of bridge for us to cross. So if you've got trust and healthy conflict, you can take a business anywhere. Once you've got those two things, you can take a business anywhere.
I'm a bit curious, Allan, like what made you decided to come to Australia?
Wow. Well, I fought against it. If Wendy was here, she would tell you. Saturday mornings in Scotland was like family time. So I would get up and we had a big garden. I'd go out, muck about in the garden. It's usually a day off. And then I would come in on the sofa and our kids would all jump up and we'd watch Bear Grylls on the telly. And I'd fall asleep. And when I woke up, Bondi Rescue was on the telly. What's going on here? Or Homes Down Under or something. And so I think Wendy always had this passion to come here. And I really fought against it. I really said, nah, how can we go to Australia? We've never even been there. You know, you can just up sticks and go and live in a country we've never even visited. And so anyway, there was a chain of it just so happened. And I got to the point where I thought, you know what? It feels like we're going to have to go to Australia. And it feels like it's almost inevitable that that's where we're going. and there's nothing I can do about this. It's just lined up. And then somebody phoned me. In fact, I went to a meeting and a guy offered me a job in Australia.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh.
It's meant to happen.
Okay, fair enough. I can't fight anymore. This has got to happen. So we ended coming out to Tasmania. Actually, I got offered a job in Tasmania.
Oh, right.
We were there for a year. And then we came over to Sydney,
And Allan, you mentioned your kids there. And I want to know, given your pretty rough childhood, were you ever worried about becoming a father?
Yeah, so I married Wendy when I was 42. We got married. I'd known her since I was about 37, been courting for 5 years. And I asked her to marry me when I was 42. She would have been 32. And she had 2 young children from a first marriage that hadn't gone well. They were maybe, when I met them, they would have been 5 and 7. And so I was going to inherit 2 young children. Although I still had a dad, but they were going to be living with me. I was going to raise them. And I think that caused me a lot of, not angst, but am I the guy for this? Have I got what it takes for this? I'm okay in business. I'm okay in but this is different. This is family. This is not like you can't go home at 5 o'clock and switch off. This is 24/7. So it took me a while to go, I'm going to do that. And then I'm ready for it. So and I think if anything, if you asked Wendy, I was like strict in a sense that I would have boundaries and I would go 1, 2. I never got to 3. And I don't know what would have done had I got to 3. So I'm glad we never got to 3.
Yeah.
But I was never hard on the kids. I couldn't. I think what I thought was, what if they run away from home?
Yeah.
And I couldn't imagine. And that made me think about my mum and dad, because we were reconciled 17 years later.
Wow.
Another, it just so happened, amazing story where I put an advert in the local paper and they had moved and some friends sent them the advert and they got in touch. In these days it was box numbers and they wrote a box number and I wrote a box number and then we met up and it wasn't I don't know if you know what I mean by Cilla Black moment. It wasn't like this, we lost each other tragically and now we're reunited and oh my goodness. No, it was like a really hard moment where there has to be forgiveness here. There has to be honesty, there has to be a way forward. And there was with my mum more than my dad, I think. But we still met and reconciled. And for me, that was really massive. My mum came to my wedding and my sister came to my wedding. And my mum and my sister hadn't spoken for years at that point either. So, it was a massive moment. Yeah.
What did it take to do that, to reconcile something which had changed so much of your life?
Yeah, I think I just went in thinking, so my dad came through the Second World War, right? He was a company sergeant major in the Black Watch and he led his battalion onto the beaches of Normandy on D-Day. And he went back and visited the grave of every soldier that fell in his battalion after the war. And he had a grenade blow up in him. And he had lumps of shrapnel in his body still. They didn't take all the shrapnel. They couldn't get it all out. He had lumps all over the place. And they put him back in. Of course, they took him back, fixed him up, sent him back to fight again. And he never spoke about it. But I can't imagine what it was like to come back. We hear a lot about it now, how difficult it is to come back. And he told me I remember a couple of times when I was really young, and I would have been 5 or 6 years old. And he told me stories of seeing his friends lying dead on the ground with not a stitch of clothing on them, but not a mark on their body. And so the explosion had blown their clothes clean off their body, and the impact of the explosion had killed them from booby traps and things. And somebody told me a few stories that I still remember, And I think, and then he told me about his childhood sometimes, and his childhood was brutal, really brutal, and my mum's childhood was brutal. So I think this is all they knew. They were copying what their parents did to them. They only knew about beatings and discipline and, being locked in your room and punishment. They didn't know really about love and in this sense. My dad was a provider. That was his expression of love, was to work 18 hours a day and provide. And I think I realizing that I didn't know much about their lives, it was easier for me to let it go and go, you know what? It is what it is. And I can forgive that. I really want to end my life knowing that I'll love my parents, not being mad and bitter about things. Yeah.
But do you ever think now, like ever think back and wish I had a different childhood and would have, the whole thing could have been different?
Yeah. I think that's a great question, isn't it? I think in my book, I wrote a little bit about that because as a child, I would go to other people's houses and the door would be open. The house would be a mess. Dad would be playing with the kids. Mum would be in the kitchen. It was just this great. And you'd go in and they'd go, oh, come on. And you'd be brought into it. And then I'd go back to my sterile environment where my mum never let anybody in the house. And it was just a horrible atmosphere, And I think at that age, somehow I wanted to steal that and hold on to it. But now I think I would not change 1 minute of anything. The risk of changing anything means that I might not be who I am today. So if I go back and change 5 minutes, maybe I wouldn't be this guy today. So I don't want that. I wouldn't want to be anybody else than who I am right now.
And Allan, you mentioned you're a strengths coach, a Gallup strengths coach.
Yeah.
And we were talking in the car on the way here, and I think it would be great to kind of explain to our listeners what exactly, the Gallup kind of framework is.
Yeah, so Gallup comes from the early 1900s, clinical psychology, and this was in Clifton, Don Clifton, was really doing this research on learning, and he discovered that if you input into people the same training to two different groups of people, one had no natural talent, one had a lot of natural talent. The ones with no natural talent had some growth, and the ones with natural talent had humongous growth, like 1,000% growth.
Yeah.
And this is 1920 something, 1932, I think it was, sorry. And I think that at that point for them, that was all education in those days was focused on what you're not good at and not on what you are good at. If you were good at it, you were left to get on with it. There was no... And then, so this whole Gallup, he became the chairman of Gallup and he developed this 34 talents in 4 different domains. So you've got relationship, executing, thinking, and strategic thinking, and influence. 4 different, and each talent sits in one of those domains. And when you know what your top talents are, then you live intentionally with that. Your potential for growth is phenomenal. Basically, if you know your top 10 talents, and now Gallup say this, and this is not a coach's spiel. Gallup say if you do your 10th strength test and you don't get coaching, better not to have done it. It's to be, because it's a starting point. A lot of these other things is an end point. You get told you're this. You do you do a quiz, and at the end of it, the information tells you you're somebody who gets on well with people. Okay. What do I do with that? Yeah. Whereas Gallup say, well, when you get your results, that's the start of a journey of unpacking who you are. So then a coach helps you do that. Yeah. So the coaching with you would be saying, right, let's look at your top 10 strengths. Let's look at what your goals are, and let's align your strengths with your goals. And let me help unpack your strengths. Yeah. And look at maybe some of the areas where your strengths are not working as well, and learning how to control them. So in certain situations, I've got input as one of my strengths. So input means I gather information and I organize it. Yeah. I'm phenomenal. If you could see my OneNote, you would not believe it. It is every book I've ever read, precede, chapter by chapter.
Wow.
All my strengths notes, I've got thousands of blogs, and you just name it, and it's all meticulously organized, right? Over years and years and years. You would not believe it if you saw it. But that, and then in here is similar. It's who I am. It's not what I have to try and be. It's who I am, and understand that. But if I meet you out, say Wendy and I are coming out, going for dinner with you, there's a risk that my input might kick in, right? So you might say to me, did you see that film about volcanoes? Suddenly I'm telling you everything I know about volcanoes. So Wendy will rub my arm, and that's the cue, right? Allan, you need to turn your input down a bit, because that person's eyes glazed over 2 minutes ago. Yeah. So there's times when your strengths or even can be counterfeit. So for instance, you could be using your strength in such a way that's good for you, but not good for somebody else.
Yeah.
So that can be a counterfeit strength, really. So as a coach, I'm helping you understand who you are. In some ways, who God made you to be, and helping you become the world Olympic European champion at being you. Yeah. There's nobody else. If you look at the numbers as strengths, the chances of somebody having the same strengths as you in the same order is something like 1 in 13 billion.
Wow.
Which, well, we know we're all unique.
Yeah.
So that's okay. We can make sense of that. But that means if you really turn on who you are, nobody can come close to doing what you do. And I think that's what's exciting as a strength coach.
Yeah.
I had not recently, I was coaching a lady in Perth, a business leader in Perth. And I was just chatting to her, I was listening to what she said. And, she was talking about, she had positivity as a strength. And sometimes when people got positivity, they're more positive with others than they are with themselves. So I was just unpacking that a little bit with her. And one of the things I've noticed with positivity, it can often be related to creativity. So I asked her about her creativity. And she said, oh, yeah. And she talked about how she used to paint. And she hadn't been painting for years. And so I talked to her about what would it feel like if you started painting again? How would that help, do you think? Oh, she's no time and she's so busy, this massive job. So I just stayed in that lane for a little bit with her think about it, Anyway, next time I spoke to her, she'd gone up to the attic and unpacked her grandfather's box, which had his art stuff in it, and found his art pens. And she'd laid them on the table and looked at them. And she'd remembered that these pens had been written during the war, used to write during the war love letters to her grandmum, who then was why she was here. So then she started to paint. And she said the transformation in her life, it transformed her whole life. That one question transformed her whole life. She went back to painting. Suddenly she was sleeping better. She had time for things. Things were coming back into balance because she rediscovered something that was an integral part of her that she had shut down. Yeah. Because of busyness, incrementally, it had just gone. So coaching journeys like that, for me, I love coaching journeys like that. Yeah.
So Allan, this talent that you mentioned, do you think they are natural or they developed?
Both. You have them, but it's only potential. So if you don't develop it, it stays as potential. Now, when I hear people saying what potential that person has, it makes me shudder. Because potential's nothing. It's only when you release the potential that it's something. You get no prizes for having potential. You only get rewards if you put it into practice.
And you mentioned just before in that example that she was brought back into balance.
Yeah.
And I want to, hear your perspective. How important do you think balance is?
I was working with another CEO and listening to him, and I said, "What's your date night?" And I thought, this is a risky question. This is my first session with him. And he's running a business with 2,000 staff. Wow. And I'm like, oh, Allan, he could just chuck it out the office right now, But I said, what does date night look for you? And I said his name. And he stopped. And he's thinking. So then we started to unpack how difficult it was, with his wife working, he worked, So we landed in a place where he could have coffee in the morning with his wife. So he started to do that. Next time I met him, he said, unbelievable. I went for coffee with him again about 6 months ago, and I hadn't seen him for a while, maybe a long time, but let's catch up. And he said that one question. He still has coffee in the morning with his wife, 7 till 7:30. That's their date time. The kids are doing what they do. And it's been going for 5 or 6 years since I asked him that question. And that one thing had made more difference than anything else in his life. And it wasn't necessarily a coach's question from strengths, probably more from Gottman, from marriage. Yeah. But it was in the listening to him. I thought, I'll have a question for you. And I think a good coach will ask you the right question at the right time. And it's an unlocking moment if you let it be an unlocking moment. Yeah.
I want to go to that point of, the overlap between all of the different coaching that you do. How important do you think personal relationships are in influencing team and business and career success?
Yeah, I think trust is everything in business. One of the things I was working with a company up in Brisbane recently, and I was trying to introduce them to the idea of story. So as a team, they come together and they're very functional, but they don't know each other. And so what you have in the room is you have unhealthy conflict, right? So things are sort of agreed in the room, and then people go outside the room and talk about them and go, oh, that'll never work, or what. But they don't say it in the room. Things they should say in the room, but they don't trust each other enough to say it in the room. And so I have a friend he's an ex-fighter pilot, and he's a coach as well, and he says, Allan, boardroom silence equals water cooler violence. And I thought, that's a great saying. I'm going to have that saying for sure. And it's true. So part of breaking it down is telling story. So in actual fact, what you're happening now is you're starting to get to know each other, not just know your function, your status, your role. And what happens in some of these organizations that I see is that people are championing their departments. So you got a leadership meeting coming together, and everybody's trying to champion their departments. But actually, the leadership team is the number one team. You should be championing this team, not your department. So you're talking about a culture shift that can only happen through trust. It won't happen anywhere. You can do as many fancy processes and systems as you want and all that, and it won't work. It only works when you've got genuine trust. And trust then. And I went back to that company about 6 months ago. And one of the happiest moments of my coaching life, one of the guys in the room who's been under a bit of pressure, he leads a department, and he said to the CEO, you said that the last time and it really upset me. And I was like, healthy conflict. Oh, yes. I've been with this company for 5 years. I'm like, healthy conflict. I couldn't stop smiling. And I said to them, guys, we've just had healthy conflict for the first time. This is awesome. Yeah. And they were all like, oh, you can't say that. Like, to the guy who said it, we could see them all going back in their seats. And I'm like, well, this is exactly what we're after. Yeah. And you've got to facilitate it because it can become personal. People don't know what healthy conflict looks like sometimes. They've never done it. They don't know how to manage it. They get emotional. So that's the point of having a coach in the room. Yeah. Is you've got this safe person who can facilitate it, because man, it can go off the rails really quick.
Yeah. So how do you actually facilitate something like that? You know, as you know, large organization, right? Everyone's under huge pressures, and also they have their own problems to go through it, right? So there's a lot of conflict. Yeah. And how do you come in and kind of facilitate and mediate?
Yeah, you have some good tools. Like a friend of mine who's a good psychologist coach taught me this tool. And what I do is I get a bit of paper and put a big cross on it, and then I put 4 letters in it. So let me think what they are. It would be F, E, T, and D, I think. Yeah. So we're looking at thoughts, emotions, desires, and facts. Yep. Right? And the idea is you put your hand on the thing you're speaking about, on the letter you're speaking about. Because what happens in rooms where things go off track is I say a thought as if it's a fact. Mm-hmm. And it's accepted by the room as if it's a fact. And we start to debate it as if it's a fact. But actually it's not a fact. It's a thought. Mm-hmm. Yeah? So I'm asking for clarity, because if you look at behavioural science, you've got parent, child and adult conversation. Right? So if I'm a parent and I'm telling you what to do, and you're a child stamping your foot saying I'm not doing it, or we have 2 parents trying to tell each other what to do, or we have adult where we get the facts and we talk about the facts, and we have healthy conflict. We disagree on the facts, or we disagree on the interpretation of the facts. So I say to people, well, if you're going to talk about a thought, put your hand on the T, so we all know you're talking about the thought. If it's an emotion, a feeling, put it on the E. If it's a desire, put it on the D. But if it's a fact, put your hand on the F. And now but we want in this meeting to have as many hands on the F as possible, as long as possible, because that's where we'll get healthy conflict. Mm-hmm. So you're training people to think a little bit differently as a coach, and to drive into the facts. Mm-hmm. I hear it all the time in board meetings. People say things as if it's a fact, and I'm like, it's not. I'm sitting at the side as a coach going, and they're all arguing about it's not even a fact. Why are we arguing about this? It's not even true. Yeah.
How important you think the vulnerability for a leader?
Very massive. Oh, you have to be willing to admit when you're wrong. I think for me, as a leader, as a young leader, I actually remember threatening somebody as a young leader. I threatened to bash them if they didn't do what I told them to do. That was my leadership style. at 20-something years old, right? Oh, shock, horror. And now I think there was when I was leading 4 or 5 businesses at the same time, simultaneously, I was under so much pressure that the pressure had to bring change because what I was doing wasn't enough. It wasn't the right way. And I think in that pressure, I started to change. And one of the major changes I made as a young leader, I would have been maybe just 20-something, 30-something, just really cutting my teeth. I recognized I'd been thinking, I have to fix this. That was my initial thought.
Yeah.
I have to fix this. And it flipped to, I have to find somebody to fix this.
Yeah.
And for me, that was a significant change.
Yeah.
And so for instance, now I work in an organization part-time and we have 470 active volunteers and I engage with those volunteers.
Yeah.
And my role in this organization is to bring the best out of those volunteers to help the organization reach its goals, right? So recently we put together a whole new program and I did none of it. I simply facilitated it. I found volunteers who were experts in health and safety, experts in mediation, experts in mentoring, and brought them into the discussion, brought experts in Canva, experts in different things in from these 470 people, and created a team that had everything we needed to do this. And now I have to manage it knowing that I've got volunteers, that they won't turn up at 9 till 5, they'll do it when they can. I have to manage the inconsistencies of it, things being ready before they're ready for them, things not being ready when we need them, and be at ease with that. And for me, I think one of the best things you can do with any leader is drop them into something with volunteers and make sure they're not the expert.
Yeah.
Because now I think you have to lead. If you can lead by influence, you can lead anything.
Yeah.
If you lead by position or status, you're limited on what you can lead.
Yeah. So, Allan, now you grew into this the volunteer with Prison Fellowship Australia.
Yeah.
What made you decided to go into that path?
I think like years ago when I was in Central America and I started visiting the prisons and I just found myself with huge compassion. And I know, like, I'm not taking anything away from the victims. I understand that some of these people have done dreadful things. Mostly all of them have done dreadful things and really hurt people. And there's long-term ripple effects across society from what they've done. But if there's not a way back, all that happens is these people come out, do the same thing again and end up back in again. So somewhere in society, we have to find a way of, and then the families are paying a huge price. The kids are paying a huge price. The spouses are paying a huge price. They've often lost their house, had to move school, had to move house, had to move cities even, while the other person is having everything provided for them in a prison. They're getting nothing provided for them and going through absolute chaos. So I think that first experience in Honduras, Nicaragua, really shaped this idea of, can we help? There's something we can do here. If the recidivism rate in Australia is 50%, so half the people that come out of a correctional centre go back in within 2 years. Of those people that go back in, 70% go back in again. And of those people, 90% go back in again. There's over 1,000 women in prison in New South Wales.
Wow.
Right? 98% of them have suffered some sort of trauma, sexual or physical, as a young person, right? So we have the most traumatized part of our society locked up, re-traumatized. If you think about that in numbers, of the 1,000 women in prison in New South Wales right now, only 20 of them have not suffered from physical or sexual abuse. Wow. These are shocking statistics, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And the fastest growing part of our prison society is Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. Yeah. And again, women there are 21 times more likely to be locked up if you're Aboriginal or Torres Strait for the same offence as a woman who's not from that background. So I feel like it's a good space to work. It's not sexy. It's not popular with a lot of people. And I'm okay with that. As I said to you earlier, I love the big challenge. I love the idea of this. People say this is impossible. You'll never do anything. Yeah, well, let's see. Let's see what can be done. And I think I hear stories. I've sat and listened to inmates tell me their story, and I know when I'm being manipulated. I know when there's like, that's not true. And I'm not, I'm wise enough to know a lot of that. But I've heard some genuine stories, and it would break your heart, the story of their life and how they ended up here. And I'm thinking, I want to help in this space if I can. And I think for me, what I'm doing is I'm facilitating help. If I run around all the correctional centres trying to do what I can, I'll only do very little. But if I can facilitate 400 odd volunteers, wow, what can we achieve?
Amazing. Yeah.
But I want to go to, like, you've coached so many different types of people, CEOs, athletes, world champions.
Over 1,000 now, over 1,000 people.
That's incredible. And I'd love to know, because that's like great research. What do you think are some of the traits or mindsets that these high achievers have that you found?
Yeah, I think one of the things I think is often ego is a good thing, and there's a flip side of it.
Interesting.
So they'll push into things and take risks that nobody else would take and back themselves. And I think if we don't have those people, we won't grow. There'll be certain things we'll never achieve, right? But also there's a need for, I think the ones I notice the most are the ones who have surrounded themselves with people who are very similar to them. And I feel like their trajectory is in trouble. I think wise leaders surround themselves with people who are quite different from them. I talk about having your own board of directors, right? And not an official board of directors, but so if you were coming to me and say, I'm going to start a business, I'll go, okay, who have you got round about you? Have you got a coach? Somebody who sees your natural talents and is able to call them out. Have you got a mentor? Somebody who has the skills and experience that you need, but don't have, and they can impart to you. Yeah. Do you have an accountability partner? And this person can't be a nice person, right? If you say that you're going to phone 50 new clients on Tuesday and you don't, they need to be in your face. You need to be a proper accountability partner. Yeah, somebody who's going to not put up with any mince, or they're going to walk away. Do you have a dreaming partner? Somebody who will sit and dream with you.
Visionary.
A visionary partner. So we start to build this kind of picture for what you need round about you. And then we start to go, how do we do that? It's taken me, in Scotland I had it. Here, I've been here 15 years, and I think I'm on the verge of having it again. It's taken a long time. So when you don't have it, you tend to go to books and podcasts to fill that gap. It's not the same. It's never the same. But you do what you can. No, you don't. I remember somebody saying to me years ago, look at what's left, not what's lost. And I thought, wow, that's a great principle. And again, I applied it immediately. From now on, I'm looking at what's left. What can I do? And I'm going to do that. Even though it feels like there's a lot of things I can't do, I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on what I can do. And I try and help other people take that same approach when they're in the middle of it. But building that network round about you so that I can go and talk to somebody and go, hey, I'm having this problem or having this situation. What would you do? Have you ever been through this before? And I think being intentional, you have to be really intentional. This doesn't happen. It doesn't fall out of the sky. You have to go looking for it. You have to be really intentional. A guy said to me once, I said to a guy who wanted this story, coaching this guy, young leader, and I said, if you could have any mentor, who would you have? And he said somebody who was really famous. And I said, have you asked them? No. Well, why not? Well, they'll just say no. So what have you lost? Well, why don't you ask them? How do you? Well, find out. So he asked them, and they said yes. Came back to me about a month later, and he said, I found out how to get in touch with them. I emailed them. I got through their, whatever it is they have, an EA or a PA or whatever, and they got back to me and said, yes, they would. And he just looked at me with like I was a superstar or something. I was just asking a question, that nobody else had asked you. Have you asked them? Have you done what you can? Because I feel like if you do everything you can, very often there's favour on that. But if you're waiting for other people to do it for you, I think there's no great favour on that.
I agree totally.
And Allan, I want to know, what is the goal of your book? You're writing a book at the moment. What are you trying to get people, or what do you hope people get out of it?
Yeah, so the book goes till I'm 52, till I'll land in Australia from when I was my youngest memories.
Yep.
And the second book is going to be the Australian years. I had 107,000 words. And I thought, if I write the whole thing, it's going to be 200,000 words. And nobody's going to read that. Nobody in their right mind is going to sit down and read that. So I have to stop and start again. And so the goal of this book, I think, is to inspire people to see in their own life places where it just so happened, and to maybe view that a little bit differently, and to see opportunities where maybe in the past they saw problems.
That's amazing. And I suppose from our discussion today, what do you think is the most important lesson that you hope people take away from what we've spoken about?
Oh, the most important lesson, wow. Yeah, I think if you can frame your life around that thing I said, the first phrase I said, there's some things in life that are not good to go through, but are good to have gone through. If you can keep that at the center of your life, because it's a broken world, and we're all going to go through hard seasons, and there's no logic to it. I've been a pastor for 30 years in my life, voluntary and paid, and I've done journeys with people who, their whole family's been wiped out by cancer. People that have been fighting it for 14 years and lost the battle, and been with the families as they go through this. And there's no logic to it. There's no reason for it. It's not like they'd lived a bad life and this is some consequence of that. It's just random. So I think, for me, that's been a really important principle. Look at what's left and understand that there's some things you'll go through that are not good, but they're good to go through. When you come out the other side, man, you're a different person, and it's worth it in the end. Yeah.
So, Allan, your book, I'm sure you're sharing a lot of your experience and pretty much background. Is that what your focus?
Yeah, I think I've tried to look at, there's a lot I've not written in the book, but I've tried to look at things I think that other people might go, I'm going through that, or I've been through that.
Or can relate it to.
Yeah, can relate to it and go, wow, I think I can see something there that I've maybe not seen before. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think, are you writing this book specifically for somebody?
I did originally. When I sat down, I thought, I want to leave my story for my kids and my grandkids. So I originally started writing a series of blogs, and the more I wrote, I thought, oh man, I need to write this as a book. I was on about blog 230, and I went, I think I should just stop and write a book. So I stopped and started again and wrote this book, and it took 7 years because I'm working, raising a family. So I was getting up at 4 a.m, doing some writing. Sometimes I wouldn't be able to do any writing, maybe for a week. So it took 7 years to write, and then been a year editing it now, getting it ready for publishing. Well, not a year, but since we went to the publishers, it's been a while. So I think that is the case. Yeah.
But do you think who would benefit reading this book?
Oh, wow. I think anybody who wants to get to the end of their life and saying, I lived the best life I possibly can. I think it would benefit. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And on that point, that's a great thought experiment that I love to do with people. And I want you to put yourself at your own funeral. What would you hope that the person delivering your eulogy would say?
Yeah, it's a great exercise. I think the person delivering my eulogy, I like them to say that Allan was patient, he was kind, he was generous with his time and his resources, and he genuinely helped me, or helped people. Yeah.
And Allan, looking back on this incredible journey that we've spoken about, given your definition of success was largely about having the ability to come through hard things, do you feel successful?
Oh yeah, 100%. I would, sometimes I'm glad for some of the things I wasn't successful in, because I feel like it could have got me off track quite easily, and I thought, I could have thought I was good at this and good at that, and suddenly I'm God's answer to this and that, and sometimes I had times when success looked like failure. It just was a tragic outcome, having tried all you can for a long period for it not to land well. I've sat and cried, deep tears over things that, people thought you didn't care. They thought you're just running a business. They don't know what goes on in the background and how much you care. And when people have lost their jobs, there's no point me telling them, I cried last night. They've lost their jobs, it's not an easy situation to be in, So I think, definitely, that would be the sense of, I wouldn't change anything. I think I couldn't be any more settled, any more happy, any more complete than I am right now.
Yeah. Well, Allan, amazing. Thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable with us. We were talking about it before. These conversations only, bear fruit when it's an authentic conversation. And today has definitely been that. But before we let you go, I've been trying to jot down what I think are some of the core traits which you embody,
right,
which have led to what I would definitely say is a successful life. And I'd like to share them with you. The first one is your ability to show up and do hard things. And I think that is, a core fundamental of your life. You've been through so much hardship, but your ability to show up and just push, and that something better will be around the corner. And, you even mentioned that, it's through these hard things that it's doing the hard things that really, motivates you. The next one is your hunger for learning. And, whether it was through books or learning from people or, role models. You said you sought out those good men to be those role models. And I think that innate desire to always be learning is a core trait that we've seen amongst, pretty much all of our guests.
Right.
It's that desire to continue to be better and to know more so you can show up as your best self. And then the last one is authenticity and humility, I think, is a part of that. To come on here and, even with your coaching as well, show your flaws, register that, you didn't have a perfect life, but that has been a core part of who you become. And I think showing up as that authentic self, it really helps develop that trust, as you mentioned. And through trust, we get really strong relationships. And so I'm really grateful that we got to sit down and have this conversation.
Thank you. That's great reflection. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we learned so much, Allan. I can't wait to re-listen to this podcast because I think we're going to share a lot of takeaways and a lot of learnings. And thank you for being really vulnerable and sharing your amazing story. It's definitely the quest to success, and you achieved that, and you share that very openly with us, and we love to share that.
Looking forward to sharing your book as well.
Thanks so much. I love it. Just so happened it's coming out in February. It'll be available.
Amazing.
So it's been edited. We're just waiting on the final copies, getting all approved, and all the bits and pieces publishers go through.
Absolutely. And Allan, if people want to learn more about you and the work that you do, where's the best place?
So theallankey.com, they can reach me directly there, send a message or a question through there if they want to connect.
Awesome.
We're just about to rework the front page there, but there's still a lot of good stuff in there.
Absolutely. I was reading through some of your blogs, so definitely can recommend that. Allan, thank you so much. And for our listeners, if you've gotten something out of today's episode, it would mean the world if you can like and subscribe. It helps us to share the stories with more and more people. And you can see all of our inspirational content over at our website, thequestforsuccesspodcast.com. And with that, we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening.